Hello and welcome to TransForm Tuesday. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Products and Services here at Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to be joined today by Sarah Mitchell, who's in charge of our documentation department. Today on TransForm Tuesday, we're going to have a quick announcement about the new version of TransForm, which just came out with release notes just hitting this morning, which is pretty exciting, although you all had a preview of it if you've been here for previous sessions or previous TransForm Tuesdays of the new features. So we're going to go through those features fairly briefly today, and then I'm going to jump into a demonstration. And today's demonstration has to do with building out web backends against using TransForm as the front end. I've shown some sophisticated examples of this in the past, but I wanted to show an easier one and actually do a hands-on demo that you can follow along with and watch if you would like to learn how to build these things yourself. So let's get started. Actually, before we get started, though, I'd like to check in quickly with Sarah. Just want to make sure that you can see my screen and that you can hear me.
I can.
Excellent, very good. All right, so let's pop over to the new features. So this blog post was actually written by Sarah, it went up here today, and it announces the new Alpha TransForm 6.0. One of the features that I've shown in this over the last couple of weeks, it's a new feature now, is the ability to do bulk dispatch. Bulk dispatch allows you to log into your TransForm Central account and download a spreadsheet that's tailored to one of your particular forms or form designs in the account. Once that's done, you can open it up, and that the template, which is an Excel template, has got columns of fields. I've demonstrated this before, that you can fill out, and then you can take that spreadsheet and upload it back into the Alpha TransForm system. When it's there, it will automatically assign the users their forms that have been assigned to them. So you can do sort of basically a dispatch type of operation with it. Now that feature couples very nicely with the next feature, which is notifications. There is a new system now for notifications, which allows notifications to be sent out automatically whenever a new form is assigned to a user. And they have a couple of ways of we have a couple of ways of doing that. One is by email, and the other is by SMS, which is terrific because it lets them know right away that there's something that they need to open up their app and take a look at. Some of the other features include custom group sorting and grouping, so you can sort not just on the metadata fields like date and things like that, but by data that comes actually from data that's been filled in. So maybe that's the name of a job site or a contact name, or however you want to sort it. It doesn't have to be metadata fields before. And we also have a way for brand new people to get into the software without even having a TransForm account. There's now a demo mode that's built into the application. So if you go to the Apple App Store or to Google Play, you'll be able to find Alpha TransForm, download it, and start it even without an account. So these are all written up here in the announcing Alpha Anywhere TransForm Alpha TransForm 6.0 release notes. And as part of the blog article. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that, and I'm going to place that into the chat window here in the GoToWebinar control panel, so you guys can take a look at that. Okay, so moving on, this is what I want to cover today. I'm going to go ahead and open up my phone and do some screen sharing and show you something that I built quickly this morning. Oh, there's Mr. Burns. All right, and close that, and let me find TransForm. Here we go. Okay. So today in TransForm, I built a new form called Site Inspection, and a lot of you have seen me build a million forms like this live in front of you, but this one is pretty simple. Take a look, though, at the new look. You'll see these nice new shaded areas and things like that that are there. Let me see if I can make that disappear. Okay, that's good. So for example, I can fill that out. I'm going to enter in today's date. I'm going to enter in the building name. Let's call this the precinct 12. I don't know if I can spell precinct right. 12 police station. So let's imagine we are doing a building inspection at the police station, and the person there will say that their contact name is John Smith, because hey, let's be original. And we'll enter in a phone number for John Smith, 555-444-3333. Okay. And then we'll type in some inspection notes. Let's say bars, bats, bars in cells are loose. Okay, so I filled in my inspection record, and I'm going to go ahead and submit it. And now it's been posted up to the TransForm central server. And for now, I'm done with this. So I'm going to shut off mirroring. And I'm going to pop over into Alpha Anywhere, our low-code development environment. And here I've built a UX control. For those of you familiar with Alpha Anywhere, that's like basically like a form. And that form, if I go into the working preview, is pulling the data directly from the TransForm server. So when this loads in just a moment, you'll see that here's our precinct 12 fire station record there, and we have the fields laid out in a manner that makes sense. Now, I just threw this together very quickly, but I could make this look really, really nice. I could choose different fonts, I could use different alignments, I could do different proximities and add graphics and all kinds of nice things to it. But for now, this is just a nicer view of looking at this particular form than using the TransForm central interface, which I think you're all familiar with. So what I want to show you now is how I put that together. And we'll start at the TransForm central side of things, where we built out the form that was used to create this example. So let me pop over to my browser, and I think I've got TransForm open. If I don't, I'm just going to go ahead and log in. So go to transform.alphasoftware.com, and I'm already logged in. Great. And I'm going to go into Designer, and I'm going to show you the form that I built. Okay. So it seems to take a little longer when I'm on GoToWebinar. Not sure why that is. All right, so the form that I built was called Site Inspection. Here it is. I'm going to click on it, then double click on it to take a look at the form commands. And it has the following fields. It has a date field, a building name field. Then I put in this group spacer. I put in a first name, last name, phone number, another spacer, some notes, and then a submit button. So all pretty straightforward stuff. But for those, and there are a few of you here who are brand new today, I'm going to show you how I went ahead and built a form like that very quickly, just using the quick start interface. So I'm going to call this one Site Inspection 2, and we'll give that a form name, Site Inspection 2. And now I'm going to input quick start text. This is a way of building out a form really quickly in a word processor-like interface. So to build this form, we had a date field, which was first, and then I'm just going to say : date, which is the syntax here, or I could have clicked the magic wand button to turn this into a date field. And as soon as I do that, if you take a look over here in the simple preview, you'll see my first field here is date. The next was going to be building. Whoops. I'm going to click in the box before I type building name. And that's a text field, so I don't have to do anything special with that. And then I'm going to put in a group. We're going to do a group heading underneath. And the syntax for that, so I could just hit this plus button. Why don't I do that for now? I'm going to hit the plus button. And there's my group heading, but I'm going to call this contact info. And then we'll add a couple more fields here. So we'll add in a first name field, a last name field, and a phone number field. And the phone number field, we're going to make a phone number. That way, when someone goes to fill it in the form, they have just buttons on the screen as opposed to letters, and which they don't need to enter. Then we're going to put in another break. So we'll put in another group heading. Whoops, hit plus. And in that, whoops, where'd my mouse go? Here we go. And in that group heading, I'm just going to put in one text field, and that text field is just a inspector's notes field. So we're going to say inspector notes. And then below that, let's add a submit button so they can save what they've done. It's called submit form. And we'll just say submit. Right. So that's all set. I'm going to go ahead and save this. Save. And now I'm going to double click on it and make a couple of adjustments that I couldn't make while I was doing the quick start text. And those adjustments really are just giving my fields proper names. So if you'll see my first name, while it's got a field label called date, field title called date, its field name is still just called field 1. So I want to change that because I want to have underneath, I want to have all of my fields given proper names because it's going to make it a little bit easier later on when I'm building out the back end of this. So I'll click down to building name and we'll just call this building. And then first name, we'll call that first name. When you assign field names, you can't include spaces in them. So I tend to do things in camel case like I'm doing right here. And now inspector notes, we're just going to call that one notes. Oops, did I do the phone field? Yeah, I did do the phone field. Great. And that's all I have to do. So I'm going to save the commands and now I'm going to click and save changes. And this will push that form up onto the TransForm server where it's there now. So now I'm going to go ahead and open up my phone, go back into screen mirroring. And we're going to go back into TransForm. I'm going to add a blank form. And I'm going to make sure that I click this refresh from server because this is a brand new form design. And I have the app open, so it doesn't know about it until I tell it to refresh. So here we are right down here is our site inspection 2. I'm going to go ahead and tap the plus button to indicate I want to create a new copy of that. And I'll put in today's date again. Move to the next field. The building name will be the Johnson School. Okay, there's Johnson School. First name there will be Anna. And let's come up with some last name. Let's just call it, I don't know, Nolan or something like that. And the phone number, 555-123-4567. And let's see what's going on here. In the inspector notes, we'll say that there is water leaking from the boiler. Okay. All right, so there is our form. I'm going to go ahead and submit it. And that's the first and only record of that type that we've pushed up onto TransForm. Let me go ahead and close down my phone so it's not in the way anymore. And what we're going to do now is we are going to go into TransForm Central, first of all, to take a look at that record. So let's go over to Management Console. And one moment. All right, and I'm going to pop down to Site Inspection 2, which is there. Great. It was just inserted, and you could take a look. There's the data that we inserted here. So now let's make a back end so that we can actually see this data. And to do that, I'm going to go back to the home screen. And because I'm going to want to talk to the TransForm API, I'm going to need to get an API key. So I do that on the home screen. I go down to developer options. I choose get API key, and I'm going to choose a read-only key. I'm not going to be reading and writing to this. That is a possibility in other ones, but for now, we're just going to have this as a read-only interface. So I only need a read-only key. So I'm going to grab that key right there, and I'm going to copy it to the clipboard. And then I'm going to pop over to Alpha Anywhere and we're going to design a brand new UX control exactly for this purpose. So I'm going to call this web component. I'm going to choose a UX control. Again, that's sort of like our form control in alpha. I'm going to start with a blank one as opposed to a template. And I'm going to start adding some controls. And the very first type of control that I want to add is called a list control. And that's here. And I'm going to call this inspections. Inspection. If I can spell. Inspections. And I'm going to say OK. And it's going to create that control up there called inspections. It isn't really going to look like anything. If I went to a working preview, it would be blank. In fact, it might give me an error telling me I hadn't hooked up the data source. So let's hook up that data source right now. I'm going to double click on the inspections control. And here it's going to ask me, where should I get my data from? What is the data source type? And I'm going to tell it TransForm. So the very first question it's going to ask me is for my key. And I'm just going to go ahead and paste that in. There we go. And now that the key has been pasted in, it knows what TransForm account I need to be in. So when I click this little ellipsis button here for Form ID, it's going to hit up TransForm and it's going to show you all the different form types that I've built. And I've built a lot of different test forms here. But the one we want is the Site Inspection 2 form, which is the one we just created. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. Okay, return field doesn't really matter, but I'm going to choose it anyway. We can use it later, and that's going to be the primary key. That means that if I wanted to build out some functionality where I click on a particular row in the field, I could have it do something. But that's all I need to do right for now. Now I'm going to go over here. If I click OK, I'm not going to click OK yet, because the next thing I need to do is I need to tell it what's going to go into the list. What fields do I want to show in my list? And I'm actually going to do something a little bit differently. Normally, when you build out a UX control, it shows all the fields next to each other, like in a spreadsheet. So, you know, one field, and then to the right of that is another field, and then to the right of that is another field, and so on. I'd like to do a slightly different layout. Instead of that columnar layout, I'm going to do what's called a freeform layout. So I'm going to choose freeform here in list properties. And then I'm going to pop over here to list layout. And I'm going to choose one of the predefined templates. Now here are the templates that are built in. And the one I want is, I only want it to show two fields. I'd like it to show the building name and then the date of the inspection. So this one here has just got two placeholders in it. So I'm going to choose that one. And I'm going to click OK. And while it's inserting this HTML here in the background, it's asking me which fields do I want to insert into those template placeholders. So for the level 1 field, I want to choose the building. And for the level 2 field, I want to choose the date. So I'm going to click OK. I'm going to click OK again. Let me just show you what I've got so far. So let me go ahead and save this. And I'm going to call this building inspection UX, building inspections 2.ux. Just go ahead and save that. Turn on pre-render, I don't really care. So don't show me this one again. I'm going to pop over here into working preview. And oh, don't worry about this message. It is particular to my machine. It doesn't have permissions to write a backup file. It's just a little bit of a detail. All right, here we are in working preview, and my list should appear, and it should show that first record that we had entered in manually. Oops, I did something wrong here, it appears. What have I done? You know, as I say, it worked in rehearsal. What's going on? Oh, look at my data source. It wasn't saved for some reason. That's interesting. Paste in the key again. Oops. No one steal my key, please. All right, so inspection 2, okay. Return field. I'm just going to go through these options again real quick. Primary key. It's okay. We're going to go to list properties. I'm going to tell it that we want it to be a free form rather than a columnar layout. I'm going to choose my list layout. Did I need to choose my fields? No, my fields are there. I'm going to choose my list layout. I'm going to choose a predefined template. I'm going to grab this guy right here. Okay. And I'm going to choose building as the top level and date as the lower level. Okay, now I'm going to click OK. Maybe I hit cancel before. That's the guess of what happened. Let's save. Okay, now let's double click on that and see what we got. Yep, everything is still there. Cool. So let's take a look at working preview. And in a moment, it should display my list control, and that list control should be pulling data from the TransForm backend. Oh, there we go. Terrific. All right, so that's great, but what I want to do is have multiple records listed out, which of course means that I need to add multiple inspections. But when I click on a particular record, I want to see details about that record. So let's pop over into the design field. And I'm going to make a change here to that list control. I'm going to tell it that there's going to be a detail section that goes along with that. So I'm going to go over to list properties, and I'm going to say this has got a detailed part. So as soon as I click that, my bad. Detail view, whoops, detail part is I need to map out my fields. In other words, I need to create some controls on my form to show the data that's coming from the database. So I do that using the mapping control here. And I want to create, I want to auto map my fields. So I could auto map all of my fields, but I'm just going to choose these guys here and say auto map. Oh, my bad. Scrolling up. All right, I can say create new controls for all unmapped fields, and then that's one way of doing it. And the other way, and then I come down here and say unmap those fields. So what you'll see is next to each one of these controls, oh, I forgot to label my phone number field. That's field 5. Oops, like me. All right. There are my new controls. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And it's going to start building controls. And it's going to ask me where I want those controls. For now, I'm going to say it's OK. You can put them just underneath the list controls. So there's position after the list control on the form. And that's fine. And I'm going to click OK. And now let's go back into working preview. And I should have a list control above and some detail fields below when this reloads. Okay, so there's my first item. I'm going to tap on it. And there is the date, the building, the first name, field 5, which is the phone number, and the notes field, which is all here. Okay, that's pretty cool. So probably the first thing I want to do to make this example more interesting is I want to add just one more record to this. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that quickly. Just open up my phone again, flip back to mirroring. There I am. Okay, add a blank form. We're going to grab that site inspection 2 form, and today's date should be fine. And we're going to give this another one. We're going to call this Elm School. The contact in Elm School will be named Jan, and last name is, I don't know, Williams. And we'll give it a phone number of 555-888-6565. All right, and the inspector notes for this particular place is we're going to say there are rats in the cafeteria. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and submit that. Okay, let me go ahead and shut off mirroring. And let's pop back over to Alpha Anywhere. All right, so if I go, oops, I need to go to live preview. If I go back from design back into working preview, it's going to load that again. And I should see my second record being loaded, the one this time for Elm School as well as for Johnson School. So let's see if that worked. So there's Elm School with the rats in the cafeteria, and there's Johnson School. Okay, that is kind of interesting. So this is a different view. I mean, you only need to see the fields here, but I don't really love the way that this is laid out. I have a lot more space on a web browser. I really don't need to take up all of this space here for the inspections. So what I'd like to do is make this about half the size or even less and put the fields to the right of that. Let me show you how I can do that. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the width of this container from 100% down to, I don't know, 40% of the screen. It doesn't need that much space. And then I'm going to take all of these fields here and I'm going to wrap them in a container. So I'm going to choose container, and I tend to like using the alignment container, so I'm going to choose one of those. Now that that's there, I'm going to say that the alignment container's width is the other 60%, but let's just make it 58% just so we can give a little bit of padding if we need to use that. And let's make this a little bit taller than 3 inches. We'll call it 6 inches. Remember, you can do metric, you can do pixels, you can do points. It's all CSS stuff. So I'm just going to go with 5 inches here. Let's go ahead and save that. Helps if I click the button, save. Okay. Again, don't worry about that error. I'm going to pop back over here into working preview. And actually, it probably won't look that different, and I'll tell you why. That's because I forgot to tell Alpha to put them both on the same line. So this is wrapped in a container. Well, it does look a little different, actually. This now only takes up 40% of the screen. So let's go back here into the design mode. And you see how it has a little paragraph marker next to it? That means that it wants this to happen on the next line. This alignment container should be on the next line. But I can turn that off just by turning off that or toggling that break button. And now if I go back into working preview, I should see that my fields are on the right and my list is on the left if I've done it properly. So let's go ahead and see how that turns out. Oh, so there they all are. That's fantastic. Now all I have to do now when I click on a particular item, we have all of the fields there. Click on a different item, we have the different field information there as well. So that is the quick and dirty way of building out an application, a backend application using Alpha Anywhere. It's actually not a dirty way, it's actually a pretty good way of doing it, but you could spend a little bit more time styling this just to make it look a little bit nicer. The other thing I would want to do, of course, is go back and actually change my field name, but since it's already set there, I can also just change it right here. I can just give this a different label. So let me move this out of the way. And I'm going to scroll down here. I think there's one called field label somewhere. If I can't find it, I can always do a search. Label. This little magnifying glass comes in super handy, by the way, because look how many different types of controls there are. So I'm going to change the label here so that it reads phone. Oops, put that. Come on. All right. And now if I go back into working preview, all should be good. I need a faster computer. For next section, I probably will have one actually. And there we go. And it's properly labeled as phone under there as the field. And again, you could do all kinds of things. You could put first and last name on the same line, which might make a bit of sense. You could put icons next to things, maybe a little pencil next to where it says notes. You could put a little phone icon where it says phone. You could change colors and all kinds of other things. So that looks like, actually we've run out of time. Wow, that went pretty fast. It's already 1:30. Let me see if there are questions here. Doesn't seem, oops, yep, someone was pointing out. Is it possible to have a list field with a list of options, but be able to type its own entry if necessary? Great, okay, so yeah, that's a question that just came in. I'm assuming that what you're talking about would be in TransForm itself, and if that's the case, yes, it is possible to create a control like that. Let me go ahead into, this will be the last question that I take, sorry, ran out of time here today. But if I went into the designer, and let's say I went back into my site inspection application, and underneath building name, let's say I wanted to add a new control and we wanted to do like a type of building. So I'm going to add in a list control. Let me go find that here. Data field, list. Here it is. And I'm going to say that one is going to be a school. One's going to say maybe a police station. Or just one's going to be a library. Just doing municipal buildings today. Okay, so those are the ones that you can go in. So now what we can say is that if you're not allowed, if you don't find what you want, you're allowed to add a custom one. That's what this option is here, search and add custom. So let me go ahead and save that. I'm going to push those changes live up onto the TransForm cloud. Now let me open up my phone, hop back into screen mirroring. All right. And we're going to add a blank form. Now keep in mind, I just made a change to this. So what do I need to do? I need to tap that refresh from server to make sure I pulled down the latest version of that form definition. So here we are, site inspection 2. I'm going to tap on that and we'll put in the date again, and we'll put in building name, blah, 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 and field title. Okay, and I'm going to choose. So let's say I didn't have what I was in here, a police station, school. Let's say we wanted to add in a fire station. Fire station. Oh, I don't see it in the list, so I'm going to hit this plus button over here. Bang, now that's a new option, and I can choose fire station in my list. So there we go. Thanks very much for joining us today. If you do have any questions, by all means, send them to tfservice@alphasoftware.com. It's managed by a team of us here. We're happy to get your questions answered. Until then, thanks very much for joining us. Thanks for asking questions. Thank you, Sarah, for being there and pointing out things like I forgot to label the phone field. Until then, hope to see you at next TransForm Tuesday. Take care and goodbye.